Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pints and Politics. My name is Drew. I'm here with Mike, and we have a special guest, Father Raphael.
Yes, I hear.
How are you doing today, Father?
Great. This is the weather and the Minnesota. I guess my first time in this year is great to hear.
Nice.
Well, it's good to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and then why you became a priest?
Okay, well, I am from Mexico, and I studied for the priesthood here. I belong to a monastery, Benedictine monastery, okay, for the Catholic religion. Um, and I became a priest because I wanted to help our Lord to spread out the message of the gospel and to bring people into heaven, to happiness and to divine things. This is the most beautiful vocation. I never will repent of this vocation.
It's funny because every time I talk to a priest and they're doing these things and they're always like, "This is one of the best thing I can be doing." They're always so happy about it.
Yes.
They always have this joy.
Mm-hmm. So you also have some, and maybe I'm hoping I recollect this correctly, but what's the movie with the Cristeros?
The
Do
Christ.
you remember
For
that?
greater glory.
For Greater Glory.
Yes.
There we go. So now, isn't there some history in your family going
Right.
back to the Cristeros?
Right.
And that movie came out a number of years ago. If you haven't watched it, it's a good movie about the government there that was taken over by basically communists, and the Cristeros were fighting for their religion, for their faith. And I don't remember all of the details on that, but you have some connection.
Oh yes, many people remember, but the general in chief in the movie is Gorosteta. He was hired. Eventually, he was in a plot to kill. The one who replaced that main figure was my great uncle, Jesus Degollado, his name. He took over and he was able to reorganize the Cristeros army and to keep fighting, yes, until yes, the disaster that we know what happened.
So they made a movie based on events that your family was a part of.
Yes, you're right. Yes. Right.
Wow.
That's pretty neat.
That is pretty neat. And the history there is really amazing. You know, Viva Cristo Rey was the battle cry, correct? And the young people that rather than sin, basically, sacrificed their lives rather than
Death rather than sin.
death rather than sin. It was actually amazing. And if I remember right, one of the stories was they burnt the feet,
Mhm.
the skin off the one young man's
Oh,
feet,
yes. So,
trying to get him to
so-
deny his faith. And he wouldn't do it. So it really is an inspiring movie if you get the chance to watch it.
Yes.
And then to have somebody here with that connection. But so you've been a priest for how long now?
15 years already.
15 years.
Yes.
And during that time, we understand in the church there was changes that took place in the 1960s from the changes in the vernacular and some of the religion, but you've spent the whole time saying the Latin Mass, correct?
From my birth. I mean,
So what's the difference? What's the biggest difference between the English or the vernacular and the Latin Mass?
well, that the Latin Tridentine Mass is divine. It is a sacrifice of our Lord Jesus Christ. And the Mass that you know in English is basically a memory, a remembrance of what happened 2,000 years ago, of the Last Supper. So it's two events completely different. The real Mass and Latin Mass, and the English Mass is two different things, really.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people don't even know what the Latin Mass is anymore. We're basically 40, 50 years. Let me think. No, Vatican II was
63, yes.
63 up to 69. So basically, we've seen 50 plus years of people who don't know the traditional Latin Mass, the Mass of their fathers, their forefathers, their grandfathers, and that's really a thing now that is kind of discouraging to that young people don't remember what that is. part of the reason we wanted to have you here today was to discuss a little bit about, and it's a question that
Well, it's a question that doesn't need to be asked.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
But it is June, and in America they call it Pride Month, which I heard recently from somebody, it might have been you, Mike, that originally June was meant as a month of humility and reflection. Is that correct?
Well, going back, the Greeks and Romans, June was actually named after. Was it Junus?
It was probably a family name of Junius.
No, it was actually a god, a Greek god.
Oh, Juno.
Juno. There we go. And that was the god of fertility and childbearing. Motherhood, basically, yes. So in the Catholic Church, the month is also the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Okay. So that's a memory of that.
And what's the Sacred Heart of Jesus? For those who might not know.
Well, every month is kind of dedicated to a different cause, I guess I would say. Devotion. There we go. Okay. Good term. And so May is generally the month of Mary. And special devotion, special prayers, litany, the crowning of Mary, great feasts and great processions and stuff that take place during that month. And it's a special devotion. It's kind of brings you, it lets you focus on different things months of the year, so you know your faith a little bit more, understand it a little bit more, and then some things reflect better with, say, like St. Joseph. He's the foster father of our Lord, and parents, especially dads, will connect with St. Joseph, and during that month, it's a special devotion, and it helps you study, gives you a reason to emphasize on that a little bit more.
Okay, so June is devoted to the Sacred Heart, which means what exactly, Father?
The love of God.
The love of God.
The heart which represents the love, infinite love of God for us.
Okay, well, neat. Yes. Well, it's just interesting seeing like how politics have changed, and now it's supposed to be like some sacred month of pride, which I don't know about you guys, but pride is kind of a vice or a sin, right? Well, just a little bit, right? and one of the weird things that came from this movement, this LGBTQ movement, and is they've got the trans stuff, and now we're questioning what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. Matt Walsh had a famous documentary called "What Is a Woman," where he dives into that. However, nobody's talking about what a man is, and I think all of us could probably agree that we know what a man is, right? But like, what does it mean to be a man, and what does it mean to be masculine as a man? I think that's the question that we're asking today.
So basically, like Catholic teachings, we often talk about virtue and stuff. So, Father, if you could just give us a little bit about, what would be the qualifications, what would be good characteristics of a man?
Of course. So, man starts by the Genesis. God describes man as a being made to his own image. So that means that we have intellect and will, and God in his most holy Trinity, in his life, his eternal life, is precisely this eternal movement of God speaking a word through the intellect, the second person. The first person is speaking a word in his own will, of love. And so God reflects his life, creating man. Like how he is, his own image is man. So, man as such was created by God as a reflection to lead. So, man is the one who protects, who seeks the common good, the one who leads with prudence, with wisdom, a family or a community. And the one who has the strength and the fortitude to defend and to lead, especially community or family, towards the common good.
Okay. So if I were to boil it down, like we're made in the image of God, and man was made to lead and to protect the world and his family.
Yes, exactly. Good summary.
So do men have to lead? When a man leads another man, is there like a conflict between there, or Or are we supposed to just be equals in that and not have
No.
leaders of men?
But basically, God has a structure, God has a plan. It's what we call obedience. God places delegates on society, on families. So we answer to God through obedience to the men, through the men God appointed as his delegates.
Okay.
As authority, like God
Yeah.
says.
Yeah, well, it brings a thought of me, a quote. If you want to lead, you must first know to follow. So therefore, if you learn obedience, then you can take charge and be in charge, and you can have other people see your example of obedience and then follow you through that.
It is known that the good leaders of society or a family is the one who knows how to obey. Exactly. So this is very well known.
So you mentioned also sacrifice. You know, as the father of a family or even as a leadership or a person in leadership, you know, there is a certain amount of sacrifice that a man, it's almost an expectation. You know, sometimes our desires, when we're young and single and selfish, you know, our life revolves around us. But once you're put into that position or vocation of the fatherhood, you sacrifice a lot of your own desires and wills for the sake of the family.
Yes. Because man, by essence, man is social, political. We call political being or social being, means that man works for a higher, for a common good, a transcendental good, which is beyond his own good. This is what it causes obedience and structure. No?
Mike, you must have gotten to him before the show, because I believe we've been saying this for almost a year now, that man is social and man needs to be together with other people. You can't be isolated.
Actually, we didn't really discuss too much before. We just said we were going to talk about what is a man. So, Father had very little prep time, actually virtually none.
Well, that's good. That means he's drawing that inner wisdom that he's got as a priest, which makes it all the more exciting.
You know, and myself in politics now, when we talk about that sacrifice, I see this quite a bit. And as a priest, I'm sure it's the same way, where we often have to, look at ourselves and say, am I doing this for my own benefit, or am I doing this for my own glory versus the greater honor and glory of God, or the best I can do for this position? And as a priest, it's got to be challenging at times as well, because you talked about having a man being a social creature, and yet when you're in those positions of leadership, there's a certain amount of distance that you keep from other people as well. When you are a leader, you can't share everything necessarily with people, because it can cause conflict, can cause some issues. So how does a priest who is a social creature also keep a separation?
Very good question. This is why we are the most sacrificed of all, because our commitment is with God, not with men. So we are obliged to be intermediaries between God and men. Intermediaries between God and men. For that reason, we must draw men towards God without obstacles, without fearing to lose anything, because we will give an account to God, not to men. Yes.
Suppose that's more motivational too, isn't it? If you have God telling you what to do, you kind of have to, right?
Well, and that account to God, and there's that responsibility as well. I don't know where it comes from, and maybe you know, but somebody had said that the streets of hell are paved with the souls of the religious.
I thought it was with good intentions.
The souls of the religious. And where that comes from, I don't know if you've ever heard of that or know the source, but so when a leader, whether it's secular or a spiritual leader, sets a bad example, that has a huge impact. You know, if we have and men fall, but at the same time, that is a far greater impact on society, on the people around us, than just an ordinary person.
Yes, our Lord was very clear. He said, "He who does not gathers with me scatters." Yes.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
he who does not gather, he who does not gathers with me
Yeah.
scatters, no?
Oh, okay. He who does not gather with me scatters.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of a little verse from, I think it's John chapter 10, where it's Jesus is talking to his disciples and they're going to see Lazarus as he's dying, and I think he died by the time they got there. But they're asking, like, Master, why don't we hurry or something? Jesus is just, there are 12 hours of daylight, we're fine. He who walks in the light doesn't stumble, and however, he who does will stumble and fall. And the light, obviously, being the light of Christ. It's one of the quotes from John I like talking about.
See, and I love that. There's a lot of people who can quote the Bible and give you the numbers and everything else. And I wish I had that. I can't. I can give you the paraphrase of the stories, but I cannot tell you the numbers and where it came from. And I don't know why. It's just one of those abilities I don't have. But so we talked a little bit about, the changes in the Mass and stuff like that. And we did talk just a little bit about Bishop Vigano, which Drew probably is not aware of.
No.
But so there is this conflict in the church right now between the tradition, I shouldn't even say in the church, but with the Pope and tradition. We've talked about tradition quite a bit on our podcast here. How important is tradition? And whether it's in the religious or the secular, and can you give us, a few words on it?
Yes, of course. Tradition is divine because I don't know if you remember, Adam and Eve, our first parents, they received all the wisdom from this created world so that they will teach to their children, to us, the secrets of the natural world. That also goes for our holy religion. The patriarchs, the prophets, the apostles, they receive divine revelation, divine teaching to give to us and to us. So we are speaking about the many divine elements, not only that, but also elements who our great-great-grandparents have been preserving and handing over to us. Should be the most valuable for any one of us, I would say.
It goes back to that leadership you were talking about.
Good point.
We lead our descendants
Good point.
into that which is good, the greater good, right? And it's interesting because we brought in the idea of masculinity and just kind of thinking about that, like, you got to lead, you got to be a part of this tradition, you got to be a part, you're social, so you have to be a part of this greater society kind of a deal. You can't just isolate, identify as whatever you want. Sometimes you have to identify as what you are, just plain and simple what you are. You have to know who you are, know your, in a way, almost know your place even, if that adds up.
Well, and there's that structure and that hierarchy that's taught, the order.
Yeah, and to tie it back to that tradition you guys were just talking about, if there's no traditions, there's really nothing to protect, is there?
Yes, good point.
And then that ignores the calling of the man as the protector of society and of people and of the greater good.
Or Satan has destroyed the family.
Well, and I think that's one thing that nowadays they talk about the attacks on the patriarchy. Like, men just have this not responsibility, but this privilege. Where we just get to do whatever we want. But it really doesn't emphasize the sacrifices made as well.
Because, what is it with, we could all be like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And in a way, we do have more responsibility because we have that more power, if that makes sense.
Well, and
I don't want to say that too hard because I might get roasted for it, but
well, no, but that actually brings something that's very relatable to a lot of, especially young people, that great power comes with great responsibility. They've seen it in the movie, but that actually comes from tradition as well.
Yeah, so as men, we need to be responsible. Women need to be responsible too, don't get me wrong. But as men, we need to hold ourselves and also each other accountable. And something that I've seen, especially in my generation, like millennials and Gen Z, is part of the thing is there's no mindset of responsibility. That's why they're going off doing whatever feels good, or just kind of sleeping around, doing all the drugs. That's why abortion is so prevalent. People don't want to be responsible.
Well, and that leads to hedonism, and
Yeah.
when you are just focused on yourself, it can lead to so many other things.
And we notice time and time again that hedonism makes a weaker man all the time. So one of the other, I guess we got to bring up discipline. We got to throw that in there. You got to be disciplined against the vices. That way you can do that which
So this is the key word, order. So
order.
Any society, any man, it has to be some under a kind of order.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how do we teach that nowadays? Because historically or traditionally, this was brought, from the head of the household, the man or the leadership, through his to his children. But now with the breakdown of the family, and where the secular or government has replaced so much of the family and the hierarchy, then how do kids even learn this nowadays? How and if they can't learn it in a
Yes.
in a traditional way or in a family setting, how does that bode for a society?
See, we have to go back precisely by tradition to the greatest examples in our life, who were the saints, especially our Lord Jesus Christ and the Blessed Virgin Mary and Joseph, to know how did they rule their lives, how do they live their lives, what were the priorities, and in order not to repeat history, the failure of history again, we have to go to this, looking for these treasures, yes, of order, of wisdom, yes.
So there again, when you talked about looking at history, and when we don't learn from our history, which is something we bring up all the time.
All the time.
How often does Rome come up in our conversations?
It comes up a lot. And I have a story, mind you, Mike.
I knew it.
I don't know if I'm going to say. I think I'm going to save it for the next video because it fits in so much better. But I have a story. It's been in my head for about 2 weeks now. Just bear with me, audience.
And I think that's what's lacking with so many kids nowadays is they don't have a positive male influence in their life. So many families, so many kids are raised by a single mother who does the best she can with what she has. But there was a study, and I wish I could remember the numbers off the top of my head, but statistically, how many, especially young girls, have no positive male influence in their life? It's just staggering.
And you see what happens to a woman with daddy issues. It doesn't end well. She ends up being for the streets.
So you talked a little bit about the saints, and that was something that a lot of people who aren't Catholic kind of have a misrepresentation of what the saints are. They say that Catholics tend to worship the saints, but that's
It's a lie, yes. We only honor those gifts like the different God, but we only worship God. Yes, in fact, yes,
but the saints end up setting an example.
yes, precisely because they keep an order and a hierarchy of values and they follow it. This is the reference that we should pursue. This hierarchy of values and to put order and therefore joy and happiness in our life.
I'm going to start using
Yeah.
that term. Hierarchy of values. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using that, Father. Is that okay?
Of course, yes,
The
yes.
hierarchy, because that's how values work. You have the most important ones, just like you have a hierarchy of sin, where pride is the top sin. The chief sin is
yes,
pride.
Yes.
You can do the same for values.
Yes, completely agree.
And we talk about virtues quite a bit. We actually have a list that we tend to pull into our podcast here quite often. So, the hierarchy of values and what's important. And that's where I think we're really lacking this in our society right now is
Values.
is values. There's something bigger than just us.
Yeah.
And, I look at like the chivalry during the knighthood, Middle Ages and stuff, the Knight's Code, which wish I had that here with me. My brother has that on the back of his
Tombstone.
tombstone. Just reading that, setting an example, which the saints are supposed to do. We can look at their example and copy that to a certain extent. And that's the lesson that they give us. That's the tradition they give us. And then that hierarchy of values as well.
I love that term. Sorry.
Yes.
You hit me off guard with that, Father Raphael. I'm just saying. That's going to come up again.
Es que precisely, it's what gives us peace. Because peace, by definition, is the tranquility that order gives to us.
Absolutely.
So that order of the hierarchy of value, precisely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it brings peace and tranquility.
Yes.
I'm stealing his terms. I don't want that. I'm going to get struck down at some point. I love this.
But not only an individual level, but also the community level. If
Yeah.
you put this hierarchy of values in the place,
Yeah.
you will have peace at all levels, if I mean.
Yeah, and then if you can start with peace and tranquility in yourself, you can exude it, and then other people will attach to it because it's contagious. Peace is contagious, or at least it can be.
Yeah,
Well,
because,
I think either side can be almost, as powerful, but which one are you going to copy? Which one is better? Because there is that hierarchy. You mentioned pride. Okay? Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. It's the major.
the root of the other
Root.
things.
Exactly. So here we are celebrating Pride Month, and that was one of the posts I had at the beginning of the month, which going back to what you talked about a little bit, I had posted, let's celebrate Humility Month, the opposite of pride.
Yeah.
And then fertility and childbearing, because in our society right now, we've become so self-centered that we don't even want to have kids anymore.
Well, if it's fertility month, boys, you got to get married. Get married, boys. It's June.
The success rate, though, and I think Jordan Peterson talked about this. He says, if you want to be successful in life, it's very simple. Don't have children before you get married.
Mhm.
When you get married, stay married and have a family.
Yeah.
And he talks about how religion plays into that and stuff, but it's very simple, and we've disordered so much of this. And then look at the chaos in our society right now. And I see conflict, and it seems like everywhere. It's really disturbing. We talk about the fall of civilizations through history, and we see that conflict, and it seems like we're heading down this path because we haven't learned from our history and we're not following our traditions.
I wouldn't say we haven't learned, we've abandoned it. Because before we did do those things where you would get married and you would stay married, and it goes back to that no responsibility deal where you can just leave a marriage whenever you feel like it because you're not happy anymore, you're not in love, quote unquote. And the thing I've learned, I'm not married, not yet, but the thing I've learned from watching successful marriages is that it's not going to be happy and perfect and loving all the time. It's work. It can be work. But at the end of the day, it's not just love isn't just this feeling that you see on the Hallmark movies. It's like a team effort. You have to be, in a way, you're one with your partner. Right, Father? You can interrupt me at any time.
No, okay. Precisely. If you want to impose yourself to your future wife, you will create disorder because the order doesn't come from you, comes from the outside.
Yeah.
From the values. So if you give order, you will get order.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's just poetic.
Yes.
But again, it's the thing. It's not all about you, and it's not all about them. It's a team thing, and it's more than about feelings. It's about that greater good. It's about the discipline. It's about tradition and that hierarchy of values.
That sounds like it should be on a T-shirt. Hierarchy of values.
We might make it happen.
That might have to happen.
When we get our T-shirt stuff going, we'll work on something.
I do. I like that. And now there's just like many things rolling around in this rock box, like a brain of mine that might have to take more conversations in another time. But it's where
we have more podcasts coming.
We do. We've been at it for a little while, and I think we've had some really good conversations, and hopefully it stirs some thoughts in people that are watching and listening too, because I made the comment last night after a guy said, our country is heading down a path, and he goes, and it almost might take war to turn things around. And there's a statement, and I said it last night, that in times of peace, children bury their parents. And in times of war, parents bury their children.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at how our society is going. I look at how the progression of evil and the embracing of sterile relationships and all of this stuff is going on. And I don't want to go down this negative road where our society breaks down into chaos. We don't want to see bread and circus, but how do we promote value? How do we promote good things so that other people go, I want that out of life, instead of being self-centered? And I hope that anybody watching this kind of reflects a little bit and learns, because I think that's kind of the goal of this. I mean, it's self-learning for us, but it's also to share some ideas and hopefully be a positive influence. So,
yeah.
Well, I'm very glad you joined us today,
Yes,
Father.
thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, before we wrap up, just on our way out, we'll start with you, Mike, and then we'll go Father Raphael, and then I will go. In about one sentence, if you could, define what it means to be a man. Real quick. Putting you on the spot. Or at least some kind of advice for masculinity. One sentence or less.
So I really feel that self-sacrifice is what it really is, because for me, I could, and I'm going a little bit long here, I understand.
Yep. Politician.
But that hurts. If I hadn't gotten married, when I got married, I was 25, 26 years old. I had a pretty good job. I mean, I could have lived a life and had the toys and the niceties that everybody looks forward to. But I chose not to do that. And even now I look at things and I go, what's more important? Is it my kids? Is it their future? I would love to have a Roadrunner, like a 1969 Roadrunner or a Charger or a Super Bee. Love those cars. They're amazing. But what's more important? So you sacrifice a lot of your own desires as a parent for things that are more important. And I think that's, to me, that kind of really, in a short thing, is what it takes to be a man. It's actually sacrifice.
Well, I would say to be a man is deny thyself, take up your cross, and follow our Lord Jesus Christ. Imitate him. Just a few words.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so my turn.
It's been short, remember?
Yeah, okay, Mike. So this is for the men, the boys, becoming men, and anyone who's worried about your masculinity. You don't need to be a hero to everyone or to the world exactly. You need to be a hero to yourself, to the woman in your life, your children, and to your friends. And with that, this is Pints and Politics. We got Mike, Father Raphael, myself, Drew. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.
God bless you. Blessing.